What made the EU blink in a high-stakes trade showdown? Secretary Howard Lutnick breaks down the real reasons behind the EU's trade deal with the US, revealing the hidden levers of power in global commerce. But with so many uncertainties and targets to hit, will the deal actually deliver on its promises?
I'm going to go right to who it really seemed to upset, and that's France and Germany. And even the European Commission president, you heard what she said. I thought it was very telling. She goes, look, I know this is awful for us. It's the best I could get. I'm trying to salvage something. So I think that indicates, and I don't want to be too jingoistic or America first, but to me that indicated that the president was able to get a pretty good deal.
Exactly right. The president knew how far he could go, and he went exactly that far. The thing about our president is he's got that intuitive nature when he's sitting across the table and making a deal. He knows how far he can push it. I mean, imagine they committed to $750 billion of energy purchases, natural gas and oil and nuclear, during his term. They committed $600 billion of companies investing in America, and then 15% tariffs. They will pay 15% pretty much across the board. And we, of course, have an open market to the $20 trillion European market. It's 5 times bigger than any other, Japan and India, 5 times bigger with 450 million people. It was a masterclass by President Trump.
I think that and everybody's saying it, that the decision to accept the 15% level was in sharp contrast to where they were recently, just weeks ago, with a much more adversarial tone. And they came to the realization that President Trump thinks that these 15% tariffs should be permanent. And my question is, can you make a strong rationale for why that is the case? Wouldn't it, if it was 0-0 on both sides, and even, got some other things extracted from the EU. Do we want this 15% to onshore? Is that what it's all about, bringing stuff back here? Or is it about all the revenue that gets collected from whomever you want to say is paying it, whether it's, you say it's foreign countries or companies here or consumers or whatever? Why is that the status quo, that it's going to be permanent?
Okay, so Europe has a $235 billion a year trade surplus with us, which means at the end of every year, they end up with $235 billion worth of dollars. They sell us more stuff than we sell them. And you know what they do with those dollars? They just buy America. We're basically having America sold out from under us by continuing to have these 1.2 trillion globally trade deficit, which every economist says should not be able to happen. But it's been staying with us for more than decades. So it's got to end. The president is changing it. So his view is you can onshore to get rid of it, or you can pay a tariff to get rid of it. But let's figure out how to get rid of it. And the key to why the Europeans did the deal is autos and pharmaceuticals. I mean, remember, we are the payer of the world, right? All pharmaceuticals, they all make their money by selling to America. And President Trump has been very, very clear. If you're going to sell here, you're going to produce here. And so the Europeans got in front of that freight train and said, we'll pay you 15% for that, but we don't want you to rip all of our companies out of Europe and move them to America. So while the French have got a lot to say, they were able to protect Sanofi from staying in France, because if they didn't do this deal, Sanofi would become an American company.
Secretary Lutnick, I think there are still some questions and uncertainties that remain around it. I know both sides have agreed that this is a framework, not legally binding at this point. But if you listen to some of the EU leaders, they'll say that there are some uncertainties still out there. And I just wonder where you think they came down, just in terms of steel and aluminum tariffs still being there at 50%. What happens with pharmaceuticals eventually? Will they be maintained at 15%, or are there additional tariffs that come in there? Some of the certain natural resources as well. And they have said that they can't promise that these pretty hefty expectations for purchases and investment, those massive targets, whether they'll be able to hit them or not, because they're relying in large part, on private funding. There's still a lot to work out. They've said that sometimes these agreements usually will take years. Do you think that will be the case here?
Well, historically, these kind of agreements would take a decade. and they, of course, wouldn't come to fruition, right? Barack Obama spoke to them for his whole term and never got anything accomplished. President Trump works on a different time frame and on a different clock. He wants to get things done now, and he uses the power of the American economy to get things done now. So pharmaceuticals was key. It was important for them to have pharmaceuticals be part of the deal at 15%, because President Trump is going to come out in the next 2 weeks with his pharmaceutical policy, and it is going to be higher. Basically, if you are not building your plant in America where we pay for pharmaceuticals, you are going to pay a massive tariff, because why should we pay for your drugs and you make them overseas and you make your money overseas? At least if we're going to pay for your drugs, you're going to build them in America. So they got ahead of that. They got ahead of pharmaceuticals. They wanted to get ahead of cars, because 25% on autos means, as you've heard Donald Trump say it, you're going to build your cars in America. No one can afford to export and pay a 25% tariff. So the Europeans found the highest level that they could survive with, because President Trump would not have cut it otherwise. And they could keep their autos there. You know, they'll do many build plants here, but they don't have to move them all here. And that was the model. They can move a lot, but they don't have to move it all. Right. So I think when we talk about it in a year, you'll see the Europeans are satisfied with it, because when they see the full Donald Trump policy, which they understood, they knew this was the important deal for them. And, of course, it was sensational for Donald Trump, because it proves everything he said about tariffs is absolutely true, and you can see it right here, right now.